Now to introduce our next panel, please welcome Alan Napetian, Vice President and Head of Site Services for Genentech.
Thank you. So very happy to be here with you to really introduce the next topic. We are going to talk about AI, so in full transparency, my remarks today were not generated by AI, and I am actually real. It's literally impossible to go a day without hearing about what AI is doing or the promises that it's making for tomorrow. As a matter of fact, even the topics we've gone through today, AI has come up multiple times. At Genentech, just as we did over 50 years ago, we are once again revolutionizing how the biotech industry is developing solutions for patients around the world. And we are integrating AI into every aspect of what we do at Genentech. From the very early stages of research, drug discovery, and development, all the way through commercialization, we are integrating AI into the work we do. And we're completely reimagining what going from the laboratory benchtop to the patient bedside looks like. And if we do this right, if we optimize and revolutionize how we do drug discovery, how we improve our systems, how we get those medicines to patients, we're going to make a significant impact around the world for all those patients that are waiting for medicines from all of us. So today, we have the honor of hearing from some top experts regarding the topic of AI. And what better place to do it, as Mayor Mahan said, than San Jose, the heart of Silicon Valley, the epicenter for innovation and technology. So with that, please join me in welcoming our esteemed panel. First, Amy Tong, Secretary of Government Operations for the State of California. Priya Srinivasan, Vice President, IBM Software Support and SRE. Dr. Michael Chui, Partner at McKinsey Global Institute. And as our moderator, leading the conversation today, Kaushik Rajgopal, Executive Vice President, Strategy, Corporate Development Partnerships at PayPal.
Thank you, Alan, and welcome everybody. It's great to see a great audience gathered here. I know it's a slow news day. But it's an exciting topic. As we were preparing for the summit, we talked about how AI as a theme would be a little bit like the old Intel Inside commercial, AI inside every panel. And as I was in the audience earlier today, that's certainly been true. The mayor talked about it pretty extensively, and I'm personally quite excited about it. We at PayPal are proud to be headquartered right here in San Jose. We employ about 4,000 people around the Bay Area. And on the AI theme, we spend a lot of time as a payments provider, digital wallet provider across our properties like PayPal and Venmo in AI enabling for customer trust to ensure security and mitigate fraud in money movement. And so many other companies right here in the Valley are using AI in so many creative ways. We've had a lot of discussion since the onset of ChatGPT about the science of AI and the miracle of the science of AI and the advances that are taking place. This panel is going to be an incredibly practical panel. We're going to be talking about how AI is being applied, how government and businesses are thinking about and applying AI today to make a difference in our lives, and what is myth and what is reality in the application of AI as we go forward. So I'm super excited to be here. We have an incredibly distinguished panel. We agreed backstage that we would do first names on the panel, so I have permission from Secretary Tong to call her Amy. And we'll start off with her. Amy, I was excited to see that Governor Newsom just announced that California will begin working with AI companies to improve public services. So it would be great to get your thoughts on what are the use cases you're thinking about, what are the priority areas, what should citizens expect in terms of the speed of the rollout?
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Great pleasure to be here and joined with my esteemed panel of subject matter experts on AI. I be happy to share a little bit of what the governor is looking at, and in fact, the state of California, as you mentioned, Kaushik, that has launched our 5 proof of concept. In fact, yesterday, I was joining the governor in San Francisco for our very first Generative AI Summit, co-hosted with Berkeley and Stanford. And it was quite a convening with a lot of researchers and philanthropies and academia, of course, involving our legislative members as well, to just really talking about what is the responsible use or launching of AI in the state of California. As the governor always stated that 35 out of the top 50 AI companies is headquartered in California. There's not a day that goes by without him talking about that California needs to do everything that we can to maintain our leadership in this arena. But having that said, AI is somewhat different than generative AI, right? And the generative AI that was really, as you mentioned, Kaushik, that launched last year with the ChatGPT being the one that really, bring the conversation to a whole new level, really brought up a lot of conversation on the benefits as well as the risk side of it. So with that, last November, Governor Newsom issued an executive order that tasking me and my agencies, along with many, many partners in the state of California, to start testing now as a way of, we call it learning by doing. And the 5 specific use cases we're looking at, 2 of them are transportation related. But transportation related is really traffic related. And we were just talking about it backstage on how after this panel, I have to drive back to Sacramento. Normally it's in a 2.5-hour distance, but probably going to take me 4 hours or 5, given the time of the day. And that is actually something that I know it's affecting a lot of Californians. So Department of Transportation is going to use the rich data that they have, so rich, so large in volume, that they are unable to really take proactive measure on what to do with those traffic congestion data, and try to see if by utilization of the Gen AI model, if there's any way to a lot more proactively to suggest alternative routes when a congestion happens, and when there is an accident that happened. For those of you, I'm sure everybody here uses either a Google Map or Apple Map to help you navigate. Those are usually at least 1 hour delayed. And if there's any further way to help with this type of redirection with the utilization of data. And then just quickly go through, so actually 2 use cases are specific related to traffic. One is on that, the other is that we have 12, not a good statistic, 12 people a day that died on California streets. And those people are usually the pedestrians, bicyclists, or on motorcycle, people outside of the vehicle, and giving the driving pattern of Californian, that stats, it's rising. And it's not something we wanted to see. So from a vulnerable road user aspect, that's what we call for those who are not in the vehicle but on the street, what can we do to take a look at these accidents that's happening around in the community and see if there's a different ways of preventing those accidents from happening. So those are 2 traffic related. Quickly go through the next 3. 2 others are health and human services related. And we're looking for ways to how do you better provide language access for the multiple benefits that the state of California are giving out to our residents, but in a much more accessible way for multiple language. And this is going beyond the translation side of it. But how do you make these translations to be a lot more plain language, a lot more empathy involved, so the recipients of these information are much more, will find that information much more helpful. The inspection of the health facility, to keep these health facilities open has been an issue. And really, in order to keep these facilities open, we have a lot of inspectors out there. But today, the inspectors, after they inspect the facility, they go back to their car and they have to match all their findings against the federal regulation, the state regulation, the local regulation. It just takes way too much time. So we're going to try to see if some of these back office improvement can help with these inspection to be complete a lot sooner. And the last one, almost there, everybody's favorite subject, tax and fee. Yes, that's not that we want to collect more revenue than necessary, but we do know California taxpayers, especially those small business, could use a lot more help when they're filing their business tax. And today, the call center, even though we have great agents and all that, but many of the questions, especially some of the more trickier ones, it takes very much time to address. So we're hoping by using some type of knowledge base with dozens and lots of questions, as well as all of the different tax regulations put together, these responses can be provided more promptly to help with especially our small business owners. So those are the 5 very practical use cases that we are giving it a try to really apply Gen AI in a very narrow, specific application use to see how would that create either benefits or risk.
I think that's worth a round of applause. So what I loved about what you said was how practical these are and how much of a tangible difference they can make in the lives of California citizens, those who live residents of California every day. So thank you for driving this, and we're excited to see what new use cases get developed. So why don't we go from government to the private sector? Priya, I'm curious, at IBM, how are you thinking about embedding AI in your products and services? What are the kinds of applications that you see of greatest value from an IBM perspective?
Thank you, Kaushik. Good afternoon to everybody. Happy to be here and with my esteemed panel here. IBM has been solving problems for our clients for decades, right? And we've always taken a customer-first approach towards understanding what is it that we're solving for, what is the problem. And AI, with all the AI transformation and all of the AI conversation that's happening, what we've done is a multifold approach. One, we have our own data and AI platform. Okay? It's called watsonx. And this data and AI platform is a very holistic approach where everything starts with data, and we don't quite realize how important the data, where the data comes from. Are you really accessing the data that you're supposed to be accessing? Whoever creates the data is really the owner of the data, and the insights from the data is the creator of the data, is the owner for that as well. So starting from data to governance, we look at governance as a design principle. Right? It's not something that comes later in the journey. Right from inception, right? The source of data, how is the model built? How is the model tuned? How is it trained? How is it tuned? Are we transparent in our decisions? That entire principle of governance is embedded into that. And on top of it comes our watsonx AI. So we bring the data, governance, and AI together as a data and AI platform for our customers. And we have watsonx assistants for very targeted, to her point of what she was mentioning, customer use cases, right? Support use case is a huge use case in the industry. Everybody wants to automate it. Everybody wants to solve for it, right? Because we want to improve the productivity of our people. So having those targeted watsonx assistants on top of our platform that you're able to get the fastest return on investment. You're able to get that model going very quickly for your own data set. Of course, these platforms comes with model. And for those of you who have not heard, IBM series of models that we announced is called Granite series of model. We do support other types of model. We partner with, for example, we partner with Meta on their Llama models. We partner with Hugging Face for other open source model. But even if with those models and the models that we've trained, there is always, in your case, you're going to have data that is very specific to your population, and there is the tuning that needs to be done with that data set to be able to provide the right value to your users. So that's our platform approach that we have. On the other side, we also have products that we take to market, right? That solves specific problems in the world, and we embed our own AI solutions into it. So not only you're getting the benefit of that solution, but you're getting it with all the benefits of AI embedded in it. The last comment I would make is, there are certain very, very targeted areas where AI is heavily used right now, and we are our own client zero. So whatever we take out as products to our customers, we're making sure we are also using the same thing. So I'll give a couple of examples. I run support for IBM, and as I mentioned, making sure our support engineers are very productive, so they're able to solve issues faster, and the value for our clients is the time to solution. We make sure we're using our own Watson X into our platform, our support platform, to be able to generate those answers faster. HR is a very popular use case, right? Hiring decisions, being able to do a lot of HR processing inside. We're using our own solution, be it for Ask HR, for Ask IT, for support, or even Ask IBM. So it's a multi-pronged approach, from giving a platform to customers so they can use their own data to be able to tune it, being able to give embedded solutions so they get the fastest time to value on the product, and making sure we're also our own client zero in leveraging it, so we're able to advise you with a very global view. We do operate globally, and we work across multiple industries. So we have the experience of the challenges we see around the world to be able to bring that perspective into our solutions and into our product.
It's also super exciting to hear you describe it, both how you are thinking about applying it within IBM and learning from that, and the concreteness of the use cases. And I think every employee everywhere would probably really be excited about AI enabling HR, right? Let's go from the corporate view to Michael. So Michael works at McKinsey's Global Institute, which takes a broad gauge, long-term view of innovation, and over time has published white papers and research on all kinds of automation. And most recently, Michael has been leading McKinsey's AI research. So Michael, as you hear Amy and Priya talk about government applications, private sector applications, and from your own research, as you step back and think about the potential for AI, what do you think are the most compelling use cases? How fast or slow do you think government and the private sector should go? And if you took a 10 or 20-year view, what are the kinds of things that you think will be most relevant to transform government and the private sector?
So we have about 4 hours to talk about. A few things. One is, like, the generative AI stuff has just reached such an amazing level of attention. On the news thing, we just published our first half of 2024 global AI survey today. I thought that's what you meant, right? But look, when we look across, we survey thousands of executives across the entire globe. For a few years, only about 50% of them said they were using AI in production, within a business unit on a regular basis. This past year, it jumped up by 20 percentage points, up into the 70s, right? And that's largely because of generative AI. And so again, we analyzed where the greatest potential of generative AI is, right? ChatGPT, et cetera. It's actually relatively concentrated in 4 areas of the business. So one of them is customer service, unsurprisingly, right? Because it's a chatbot, right? Another one is marketing and sales, right? Because you can have it generate individualized marketing messages, or as you've probably seen with Sora and other technologies, it's starting to generate video, and you can say, please create me a 30-second, video spot. Those of us who have spent time on the keyboard know that it's, software is just written in a programming language, right? And you think about these generative AI systems being large language models, you can ask these things to write code now. Now, it's not perfect, but then again, sometimes I think about these systems, treat them like summer interns, right? They're useful, but you kind of have to check what they do. But it's productive. And then the fourth one, I think, is a little bit, about 3/4 of the potential value we see from generative AI are in these 4 areas. The fourth one, I think, is most underappreciated, although a number of companies around here do appreciate it. Think about it, if it's generative AI, think about the application of this within R&D. So in life sciences, don't generate a poem, please generate a number of drug candidates for me. Please generate a number of electrical circuits. That, I think, is a really hidden area. So that's all generative AI, and we've done a lot of analysis of that. But there's all this other AI before generative AI. The interesting thing about generative AI is we all got to use it, thanks to, it feels like it's been 10 years, and it's only been since, a couple Novembers ago. But what that did was make AI accessible to everybody. But there's way more potential value in the non-generative AI stuff, right? Things like optimizing traffic flows and all those sorts of things, largely behind the scenes, right? Call it analytical AI, but there's almost no part of the business or public sector or social sector which can't improve from having better decisions based on data, right? Like friends of mine have talked about HIPPOs, the highest paid person's opinion, as the way that decisions are made in most organizations, right? And thank you. Smattering of laughter. But if you really, I can keep going. My freshman year, actually, I was voted most likely to be replaced by a machine of my own making. Actually true. Okay. But if you can improve decisions across everywhere in the business, it turns out that the places where AI writ large, not just generative AI, can create the most value is where most of the value is created in the business. And that's in two places, right? One is, again, in top-line marketing and sales, next product to buy recommendations, marketing mix, optimization, and then in operations. Again, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's reducing unplanned downtime, improving your logistics networks, all of that stuff, all largely numerical or analytical AI. And so, the nice thing about generative AI, it's opened up a lot of decision makers' aperture, right? Like I'm a former CIO. It wasn't really easy. It's not really easy to get a meeting with a C-suite executive and you want to talk about microservices architecture. Kelsey probably want to talk about it, but most people don't, right? When you want to talk about like ChatGPT, oh yeah, let's talk about that. And it can open the aperture. And so we're seeing this start with generative AI. It's interesting to the C-suite. And suddenly you realize there's all these other places where you can create value too.
Thanks, Michael. Notice they cut off my mic when I tried to make a joke about him. I only talk about microservices architecture over drinks, but one of the reflections, and I'd love to get each of your perspectives on this, right? You all talked eloquently about use cases and potential value that AI could create. And right now, a lot of these use cases have a significant focus on augmentation, right? Enabling humans to do their job better, right? There's a phrase called human in the loop with AI, particularly around applying judgment, safety, security, ethics, et cetera. I'd love to get each of your thoughts on what the risk is for AI, whether it's from an ethical perspective and how it's managed, or the risk of job loss as a result of automation because of AI.
I guess you're looking at me, I'll start. So Michael, I do want to jump on one of the point that you mentioned. I was a former state CIO as well. And compared to what I do today, which technology innovation is still in my portfolio, but I remember the days that when I was the state CIO, trying to get the Governor then interested in technology. This may just be Governor Brown's issue, but that's okay. That's neither the point. Cybersecurity a couple years ago was very big, but when you go talk to them about cybersecurity, they're like, just go fix it. But now with this governor, again, it's just maybe a different governor. Governor Newsom, when it comes to generative AI, this is something that he just constantly in his mind, because AI itself should not be seen, and we're not presenting it as a technology topic. It is really an impact to society. This is an impact to, somebody call it an industrial revolution, the next industrial revolution that really changes your workforce, your job market, and the trajectory of how people, provide services, right? So on that, coming back to your question, Kelsey, about what are some of the risks and what is people's worry about job replacement and that. We obviously with the state of California are very, very conscious of the fact that what does this mean to our workforce? Not only the 250,000 employees in the state of California, but we're also are working very hard with the industry as well as just the workforce in general, looking at the state of California as holistically. What does this mean? What type of trainings for those already in existing workforce? What do you need to provide them so that they can be upskilled by the potential modification of their work due to the augmentation capability? What are the training that are needed for the faculties, in universities and academias who are providing this type of training to the students that are coming up? How do you prepare the future of workforce? Now, I would not categorize those necessarily as risk by any means, but I would definitely categorize those need to require intentional focus to make sure that as much as we're looking for ways and creative ways to adopt utilization of Gen AI, we cannot leave our workforce behind. That's number one. Number two, the risk on the Gen AI, I'm just gonna stay on the people aspect of it, is that we do have also many vulnerable communities already impacted by the digital divide. The further utilization of generative AI to assist with some of these service delivery could potentially perpetuate that divide. And it's very important that we engage them early on and figuring out what are the methods that we can do. So from an equity aspect, that the training that they need, the digital literacy, or how to help differentiate the mis and disinformation that are out there that could be exaggerated by the generative AI. How would that impact our society in general? So I think aside from a lot of conversation, obviously the privacy, the security, the cybersecurity side of it that people typically talk about, our priority in the administration is really a people-centric focus to making sure that the generative AI is adopted in a very intentional manner.
There are two words that what she said I want to kind of focus on. We have to be conscious of certain things, and we have to have focus based on being conscious. So a couple years back, there was this HR recruiting solution where the solution actually got pulled out of market. The reason was it had a bias. It had a very significant bias. The data set, right, garbage in, garbage out, the data set that was used in that HR solution was essentially, here's your female population of employees, and this is the type of job they do. Here is your male population, and this is the type of job they do. Now you're training the model on that data set, and it is making recommendations for you while you're recruiting. You're going to have biases like that. So it's very important that you understand the data that you're using and how do you keep your AI free of those biases. We got to be very, very conscious of it. Two, I think we have to know whether the decision that's being made is made by a human or some of it by AI. And I'll give a very, very personal example. I was talking to a chatbot for several minutes with an airline without realizing I actually was talking to a chatbot, and it's not an agent on the other side. Impressive, super impressive. I did it all through text. And only when it said, let me connect you to an agent, I realized, oh, that was a chatbot that I was talking to. Very impressive. But it's important. Transparency is very, very important, right? The power has to be with the people. So which means we got to know who is making the decision, how is the decision being made. So we have to be very conscious of it. Not saying it's a risk, but we have to be conscious of making sure we're selecting the solutions in a way that we're conscious of that. Over time, it's going to help make decisions like hiring decisions. It's going to help make decisions on interest rate. It's going to help make decisions, right? There's going to be generative AI used on multiple use cases. The four, he said, top-notch use cases that are being used today, but there is going to be more and more of this. It has to be very transparent. It has to be explainable. And I'll explain what I mean by that. You got to know how it arrived at that decision. We all buy products. And back in the day, we used to read through reviews and reviews and reviews before we make the decision. Now there is generative AI that actually summarizes all the reviews, and it says, this is what the user community is saying. Great design, bad support, excellent this. Now, you got to know that summarization is coming from AI, and you still have to be conscious of using the human intelligence before making the buying decision. So it's all things that are solvable. We just have to be conscious, and we have to focus on it. The last thing I would say, and I could go on things that we need to watch out for, but the last thing I would say is there is still a bit of fear on AI. I think we have to embrace it. We have to embrace it to accept that it is, and you used the word, Kaushik, was about it's augmenting. The augmentation is the key word. It's augmenting to help us make our decisions better, faster, more robust, whatever that is, right? So we got to embrace it. And there is a bit of fear, and the fear also comes from us not necessarily educating ourselves on it. And it's not a race either, right? That's the other part of it. Everybody wants to get into this race of using AI. It's not a race. It is a journey, which means it needs to be thought through. What is the use case you're targeting it for? Why are you targeting it? What are you expecting as an outcome by targeting? That level of thinking needs to go in. So I would put all of the risk into what we need to be conscious about and how we need to focus, and there is an approach towards focusing on it, then we can mitigate all and every risk if you're conscious of it.
I'll just try to add a few other things, right? I'll talk a little bit about some of the risks. In our survey, we survey about 12 different risks, or a dozen of them. It's a little discouraging, given how much press there is about the risks, that less than half of most companies actually recognize these risks as being relevant, and of course, even fewer are mitigating them. Now, the number one that comes up for generative AI is hallucination. People are probably familiar with this, right? I mean, my birthday was a few days after ChatGPT was released, and a colleague of mine had it, write my biography. Because of my role, I'm relatively online, and it said I graduated from Harvard, went to graduate school at MIT, and co-authored the best-selling book, The Second Machine Age. Exactly none of those things are true, much to the sadness of my mom. But, I know people who, I know the people who actually did write that book, for instance, and so that's a problem, right? But like I said, if you treat these systems as an intern, but again, you have to be thoughtful about those sorts of things. On cyber, too, on cybersecurity, it's scarcely imaginable to have a better, system to help with phishing attacks than something that will actually generate individualized, suggestions about how to address somebody. So again, there are a whole set of risks that are associated. Many of them are echoes of risks from other technologies, but some of them are enhanced a lot by generative AI. In terms of the labor stuff and augmentation, I often think that augmentation and automation are two sides of a coin. It depends on how you look at it, because generally when we automate things, we don't automate an entire occupation, right? I don't step out of my chair and a robot walks in and does everything that I do, because we have a very heterogeneous set of things that we do. So we did an analysis based on 2,100 different detailed work activities as the ONET database analyzes it, not at the job level. And by that analysis, in the United States, by 2030, in the midpoint of a wide range of scenarios, about 30% of the hours that people work today potentially could be automated, not just by generative AI and AI, but robotics, a whole bunch of different technologies, which sounds like a big number, and it is a big number. But it's not historically unprecedented. It is actually historically precedented. That level of change has been seen before. But we had to work really hard to make sure that people continued to increase their skills, that jobs were created. And so I think, and the other thing is, when we model it out, what generally happens is lower demand for lower wage jobs and higher demand for higher wage jobs. So again, in the optimistic scenario, that's a good thing, right? As we migrate workers into higher wage occupations, that's a terrific, outcome. But we have to work at it to make that outcome a reality, as opposed to having people who, don't have the skills they need in order to move in those types of occupations. So I think, again, this is, I say I don't study the laws of physics, right? What we'll obtain will be the result of human choices. And we all have a place, a role to play in making those choices.
Yeah, I love that. Such nuances here, like Amy's point about, government needs to think about employment as a steward. Priya, your point about transparency, particularly with regard to customer experiences. And Michael, you underlying the point that, this is new technology, right? And we have a role to play in shaping how it evolves, right? So let's not lose that thought. Let's stay with you and go the other way. I'd love each one of you to offer either a prediction So if we're sitting here 10 years from now, where, a prediction about what has AI truly transformed, or it could be a caution about the one big thing we need to be thoughtful about in helping shape this technology, as you noted. So let's start with you and then Priya and Amy.
I mean, one of the, I think, under-recognized challenges is the demographic challenge, California and other places as well. I'm sorry, we're all getting older, right? But for immigration, right, the number of working people is going to start, like if you look at Japan, the number of people working is actually declining. China, Western Europe, et cetera. We just have fewer people working, and that's been half of the sources of our economic growth over the past 50 years. So we badly need to improve our productivity. And so my hope is over the next 10 years, bringing these technologies along as well as upskilling our workers allows our kids to have better lives than we do in a really significant way.
I'm so glad I sit in the middle so I can kind of pick up from what either one of you are saying. Don't have a crystal ball, but I do think we're scratching the surface. We really are scratching the surface. We have some ways to go. And I do believe certain things we'll just realize, like every revolution in the past, right? Industrial revolution, .NET, everything, right? There are certain things that surprise us and certain things just does not pan out the way we think it would be. So we're going to see something very similar as well. But there is one thing I hope it happens is it becomes more organic, where we do it in a way that it is, like, it's done in a way very, very operationally, very simple, very straightforward. We can see it, we can understand it. It's not magic. We say this all the time, right? We say AI is not magic. It's math and science. That's really what it is behind. So it's very understandable, and we get to a point where we can actually experience all of that and be able to make our own, decisions better. And again, we're just scratching the surface of a lot of use cases. I think as an entire global, population, we're all going to figure out where it's going to best apply and focus, not like, right now we're trying to focus on everything. We're trying to solve everything using AI. We will then realize here is where it is best used for best productivity, and that's what I'm hoping, more than a prediction. I'm hoping that's where we will get to, and AI has to work for us. We don't work for it, right? We all acknowledge that. So which means we have to make sure that we're using it for the right purposes to solve the right problems that we really want solved, and do it at scale.
Yesterday at the summit, and I was trying to remember who actually used this analogy, and I really liked it, so I'm just going to borrow it without giving credit to the individual who actually said it. Someone was comparing the generative AI today. It's actually accumulation of not only the human intelligence, but the human stupidity, right? It's the good and the bad and the ugly that we all have gone through, and now it's just in a greater scale, because all those information, all those data that are out there, it got accumulated, and then it probably will continue to learn from it. So there was definitely a reaction in the room, and I think that speaks to Priya, to your point. My cautious to all of this is because generative AI is moving rapidly, and people always say, "Oh my gosh, we don't know what's happening. We don't know what we don't know." Yes, we understand that, but also don't let the fear of becoming the reason that you don't want to engage or embrace. Or that fear, feeling like you're losing control, because at the end of the day, the algorithm, the data, and whatever you do, humans still play a huge role in managing that. And as much as we're looking at, the mistakes that each one of us have made, or intelligence that each one of us, or the experience that each one of us brought forward, how do you use that to better help with the automation side of it at a much larger scale? I think it's a positive thing. So as long as you have, again, the intentionality, purposeful, and how to use it, have a mindset of a responsible AI, from the get-go, I think this is a very optimistic outlook. Now, the final point on this is that there's also people on the pessimistic side say compared to, oh my God, this is gonna, like what happened is a repeat of how social media is impacting, our society today. That is a right flag, that is a right concern. But if you're looking at it, whatever happened to, however the social media, it's entrenching into our everyday life, is not something that we should repeat. And that is why we always say, do not let the fear on the unknown prevent you from having the desire to engage from the very, very get-go. Because before as long as we engage early with intentionality, we do believe there is a way we can continue to shape how generative AI would be a beneficial use for us.
Awesome. Thank you to our panelists. I know it's traditional on these panels to do a popcorn round with the panelists to close, but I'm actually going to go to the audience for some interactivity. So I'm going to list 5 use cases one by one, and I'm going to ask you, are you very excited about this use case for AI with a show of hands? And you can vote for as many use cases as you want, so you don't need to pick one. So who's excited about AI for tax optimization? That's actually a pretty good showing.
Government to optimize its tax revenues, or for the taxpayer to reduce their tax?
I'm going to go with Amy's optimizing for the individual to pay the correct amount of tax, right? Yeah. So that was actually more than half the room. All right. Who's excited about AI reducing traffic congestion?
Has to be the full room. Thank you. Yes.
Very popular. Amy's excited about it. She's driving back up to Sacramento. Who's excited about AI answering employee inquiries? So AI enabling HR. Okay, there's about like 10 people. Who's excited, as Priya was saying, like transparent AI customer service, AI-enabled chatbots? And then Michael's use case, who's excited about AI-enabled drug discovery for new therapies? Awesome.
Oh wait, I didn't know we get to raise our hands too. So I had to.
Well,
I'll raise all
you
5.
raise for all 5?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Well, there's a lot of excitement in the audience about AI. I just want to close with this anecdote because this is a summit organized by the Bay Area Council. It's the Pacific Summit. It's right here in the Bay Area in the heart of Silicon Valley. A few months ago, I went to Florence and I caught up with an old friend. And I hadn't been to Florence before. He lives nearby. He walks me around Florence. And you're like, wow, this is where, the Medicis invented banking. This is where Galileo conducted experiments, not far from Florence. And I was saying, wow, it's special to be here. And he looked at me and he said, you live in today's Florence. It's worth thinking about. We live in today's Florence. I'm 50 years old. In my working lifetime, there have been 3 big technology platform shifts. The commercial internet, built on the World Wide Web in the early 90s. Mobile, 15 years later. I think we all remember when Steve Jobs unveiled the iPhone. And now Gen AI. And it's happening here. This is the world center of gravity for innovation. So as you depart from the summit and hit traffic, not yet optimized by Amy's AI, remember that you live in Florence. Thank you.